Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's been a while, but today we're going to be looking at a data analysis of the French Grand Prix, followed by and tied up with a preview of the upcoming Hungarian Grand Prix. In today's video, on the agenda is the title battle between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. We've also got the battle of the Mercedes boys, Hamilton and George Russell, who are finding their feet in the W13, as well as the midfield roundup from France and a preview for Hungary. Before I get into the numbers and all the data, please take a minute to subscribe to our channel. It will mean a lot. And without further ado, let's get into it. Shown on screen here is the first thing we're going to be looking at, and it's a data trace of Leclerc and Verstappen's Q3 laps from France. Whilst it's not the most important part of the weekend, it always gives a good indicator of each car's strengths and weaknesses, as well as the different techniques and styles Verstappen and Leclerc are employing to extract the maximum possible lap time from their machinery. So, shown on screen, credit to F1 Tempo, who you can get the data traces from, link in the description below. We can see a speed trace from Max and Charles' fastest laps in Q3. What's evident straight away to me is the incredible amount of speed Leclerc can carry into both the slow speed and high speed corners compared to Max Verstappen. He's more aggressive on the brakes. His speed traces, which is the line shown in the top graph, have less of a slope, showing there's more downforce under braking from the Ferrari. He can roll more speed into corners, brake later, and gain lots of lap time in the corners. He lifts less as well through the high-speed stuff at the beginning of Sector 3, which is also a good sign in terms of downforce when the car's fully loaded. And overall, it's a positive sign for the upcoming Hungarian Grand Prix, which is full of twisty sections, slow speed corners and big braking zones. On the contrary though, we can see Max is very strong in the straights and gains massively on pretty much every massive straight. The only one he doesn't gain is on the Minstrel straight at the beginning of Sector 3, where Leclerc obviously had the toe from Sainz, and Max didn't gain as much as he could have done without the toe. All in all though, it wasn't enough to gain Max pole, and Leclerc would have been on pole with or without the toe. Moving on is the race pace, but obviously with Leclerc's crash, spoiler alert, we can only look at the first stint, and this is what I've done. Again, thanks to F1 Tempo, who has this graph of all the lap times from each lap, which is she's shown on the right. And key pointers really are that they were really close overall during the first stint. Max was within DRS of Leclerc for the first 12 laps, but seems to suffer a bit more from the tyre deg, as we can see at the end of the graph here. Max's lap times are getting higher in the 139s, whereas Leclerc manages to keep them in the 138s, suggesting the Ferrari had better tyre wear as well. So had Leclerc not crashed, he probably could have been on for the win, but if buts and maybes, we never know. Ultimately, Leclerc's mistake was what handed Verstappen a superb, dominant victory over the rest of the field, and now has a 64-point lead over the Monegasque. This next section follows the Mercedes boys, the battle of the Brits in the Silver Arrows. And this week it was Hamilton who came out on top for the fourth consecutive weekend on the podium in a car that's not as quick as the Ferrari or the Red Bull, but has bulletproof reliability, and Hamilton extracting every millisecond of performance recently. So is he back to his best? I think so, personally. But on the contrary, George Russell struggled a bit in Q3. He's 4/10 slower than his teammate Hamilton, outqualified by Lando Norris, who's arguably in an inferior McLaren on the day. But on Sunday, George got the job done, beat Perez, who was driving a far superior Red Bull. Some very clever driving under the VSC to grab that P3 right at the end of the race. But that being said, the double podium for Mercedes, whilst it looks great on paper, the pace still isn't quite there to challenge for wins and for podiums consistently, in my opinion. I still think with a fully functioning Leclerc, Verstappen, no mistakes with the reliability from Sainz as well, or on a good day, Perez, I don't think Mercedes quite have the pace to challenge for podiums out and out. But at the same time, they're keeping it out of the walls and they're keeping it on track. The engines aren't blowing up. They're on point with every little operation. Safety cars, pit stops, starts, you name it. Mercedes have got everything there. They're just lacking that ultimate pace to challenge the top guys. But once they unlock the potential from their car, no doubt they'll be challenging for wins and who knows, maybe next year, championship. This graph shows Hamilton and Russell's Q3 laps. It's always interesting to compare the two teammates who have the exact same car, see how they're driving differently, where each driver is strong and weak. And in France, obviously Hamilton 4/10 quicker than George Russell in quali. He's very, very strong on the brakes. Hamilton has a reputation for being the last of the late breakers when it comes to a qualifying lap. His left foot is where all his lap time is. And we can see that on the data trace against George Russell. Hamilton's down there on the brakes harder later, gets the car stopped quicker and rotated quicker. But at the same time, he doesn't scrub off as much speed at the apex, so he's braking later and carrying more speed through the corner, and he's just gaining chunks of lap time in these slow speed corners. The end of sector 1, the chicane in sector 2, and the final corner in sector 3, he gains about 1.5 tenths in each corner, and that's where all the lap time is throughout France. And they're quite similar through the high speed. That's been a trend all season. But now Hamilton, as he gets more comfortable in the car, gets the setup into a place where he likes it with the engineers he's been talking about recently. We're really seeing the best of Lewis Hamilton once again, and it'll be interesting to see how this battle develops now that there's no bouncing or aerodynamic porpoising from the W13 anymore. So yeah, George has really got his work cut out against a fit and firing Lewis Hamilton. This one in particular shows the delta after the safety car between Hamilton and Verstappen when they were on the same aged hard tyre compound. And we can see it's around 4/10 of a second, 3.5 to 4/10, what Hamilton lacked to Max in this time period during the race, lap 21 to the end. Around 30 lap sample, which is a good sample, which is what we want. It gives us a good read on the pace over a long stint, including DEG and all sorts of things. Ver was mightily quick, had the massive advantage over his teammate Perez, was in a league of his own as soon as Leclerc binned it, so he was always going to win that race. Mercedes lacking ultimate pace. You can see on the graph that Verstappen's gap comes in these short spikes. Verstappen extends his advantage quite a lot in these short spikes every 10 or so laps. And after these spikes, we can see Hamilton can keep a consistent pace once everything settles down. But then Max just bangs in a super quick lap, which the Mercedes can't quite do to the same level, and that's where the deficit really is at the moment. But Hamilton was still quicker and gapped Sergio Perez on merit. So who knows, if Perez is having a bit of an off weekend like he was in France, there is podiums and massive points up for grabs. So Hamilton executed his race to perfection, got the P2, and he was on absolute fire, don't get me wrong. for me, he was my driver of the day. So yeah, big up to Lewis Hamilton in France. Now for the midfield, it's always tricky to read who the quickest car actually is. There's so many different variables that goes on in the mid-pack. But as it turned out, at the end of the race, it was Alpine who edged out McLaren. Fernando Alonso, the wily old fox, just had them all in checkmate from the word go. It was quite funny to see how he was keeping Norris in DRS to destroy the tyres. Then all of a sudden, bang, puts in some hot laps, beats him by 9 seconds at the end of the race. Now, what can we expect in the Hungaroring? Well, if we look at the weather forecast, various sources are telling us potential heavy rain and thunderstorms for qualifying, which should make for very exciting action on Saturday. Speaking of the layout, in case of any dry quali or if they move it to Sunday, it should play to Ferrari's strengths. Lots of twisty bits, big braking zones, hairpins, that kind of stuff plays into their strengths. Not many long straights where the Red Bull has traditionally been strong. And my man to watch for this weekend is Kevin Magnussen in the Haas. It's got a massive upgrade package. They're only one of the season, if I'm correct. And if this upgrade is worth a couple of tenths of a second, he could be right in the mix for big points. So watch out for K-Mag. He's always going to put up a good fight, isn't he? So I'm very excited to see how much the Haas upgrade brings. And that concludes it for this French GP review, Hungary preview. Should be an exciting weekend. Hungary is one of my favourite tracks personally. It's like a go-kart track. It doesn't give the driver any room to breathe, punishes mistakes. It rewards bravery, commitment on corner entry. So it definitely is a fan's favourite. Some changeable conditions are forecast, and hopefully the Hungaroring can give us another cracker. Thank you so much for tuning in to this video. This is what I look like. This is a face reveal, if you like, if you didn't know what I looked like previously. I hope you enjoyed watching this data roundup. Got many more to come in the coming races. There'll be one for Hungary and every race after that. So you've got that to look forward to over the summer break. And let me know in the comments, what are your predictions for the Hungarian Grand Prix this Sunday? I'd love to know your thoughts. Would it be Red Bull, Ferrari, or somebody else coming out on top? Look forward to reading them. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all next time.